What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we are here with Jillian Taylor of Ruby the Hatchet. Great to be able to talk with you. Thanks for being here.
Hi, I'm happy to be here.
Of course, it's so awesome to have you here, and a happy record release day because by the time this goes up on YouTube, the brand new album Fear is a Cruel Master is officially out. But for people who haven't heard the full length album yet, do you feel that the two singles that you released, Thruster and Deceiver, are a good representation of what this whole album will sound like, or is that just scratching the surface of what's to come?
I think that there's a lot of different songs on this album, much different from the two that we released. So I feel like it's a good sampling, but there's a lot more.
With the making of this album, was there sort of like a preconceived idea of what you wanted this album? Were you kind of like continuing in the vein of albums such as Planetary Space Child or Valley of the Snake, or were you trying to take maybe like a brand new approach for the making of this album?
I would say not intentionally, but just naturally over time, evolving as people who have been in a band together for almost the better part of 10 years. Just a natural progression, nothing planned, but everything kind of being a product of our time together.
Does Ruby the Hatchet like to sort of like experiment with their style in a way and experiment in songwriting, or do you try to maybe like find a specific sound that you try to stick with?
We definitely love experimenting. That's our fave. I think we write all of our songs together. There's no one singer-songwriter type of person, and we all have very different influences. So I feel like we get together and everyone gets to kind of do what they want. Let's say no one's telling anyone what to do. We share our ideas, but I think that our sound comes from our combined influences, and we're always open to where it goes. But when the five of us are together playing it, to me, always sounds very specifically Ruby on its own.
Well, you're one of the first people I heard say that you all write together because I've talked to so many artists, and isolation is always a great fuel for creativity and solitude. But it seems like for your band, it almost seems like there's such an organic nature to the point where writing together is how all these songs are cultivated, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think this album, there's more that Owen brought to the table, our drummer. We've all over time kind of experimented with different bands. Like a lot of us have joined different bands, different writing projects. And that is kind of, in my opinion, made Ruby stronger. And, everyone's kind of like out there working the field in different genres. And then we come back and put things together, or people kind of develop ideas on their own more now. But still, everything, it never sounds like a Ruby song until all of us are on it together. And I think it's kind of our secret sauce. It's also why albums sometimes take 5 years to make.
Hey, this album was 100% worth the wait. I can tell you that much. So,
Thanks.
and it's funny you mentioned that too, because do you feel like it's easier to come up with songs if everybody in the band is sort of like in the same state of mind and kind of like on the same page, or do you think if everybody is kind of like in their own little universe, that could help enhance the song in a way and create more new territory to explore?
Yeah, I think I'm one of those people who think like a wealth of knowledge and experience will only add good things. I think also that's part of why Ruby has stood the test of time as far as not breaking up. We've seen a lot of bands like get together, we thought they were great, and then they break up and we're like, why'd they break up? But like we give each other a lot of freedom. We don't have, people can go and do whatever they want and live their lives. And I think with that, also you reap the benefits of people living their lives and then coming back and wanting to put into the band. So I am a fan of it. It's good to be focused, but we're not the kind of band that tours for the better part of the year. We're a little choosy, and we definitely like people to, have their lives and do their things and bring the good vibes back to Ruby to keep it going.
And I think that has to keep the songwriting process interesting. I mean, there's some bands that do it very well, but I personally don't understand how people could write an album, 2 years later make another album, 2 years after that make another album, and tour in between all that time. It sounds rather deteriorating.
Yeah, it's physically, mentally, spiritually, all the things. Like it's tough to cram in a van and like have that energy every night to give an authentic show, because that's the only way that I can really do it. And it just, we have like a little more time between, but I think that it makes our songwriting stronger and doesn't burn us out. We're in it for like the long haul. So we're going to make music either way. We always have. Before we were signed, we've all been friends for a very long time. So we're more like looking to see what we can get out of it for our lives.
And you led me perfectly into the next question. I needed to address this because this year marks 10 years since the debut Ruby the Hatchet album with and forgive me if I butchered the pronunciation, but Ouroboros, is that how you pronounce it?
Oh yeah, Ouroboros.
Okay, Ouroboros, and apologies.
No, all good.
But
a word no one knows how to say,
yeah,
including me.
Yep, right. Yep. I do got to say one form of progression is that every album has gotten easier to pronounce.
Yeah, there's one thing.
Yeah. But kind of going back into 2012, what was the sort of mindset behind the making of that debut album, and how would you say you've evolved since then?
Oh man. I mean, honestly, the making behind that album was a couple of us got together. We were playing songs. We started as a three-piece. It was me, John, and Owen. We didn't have a bass player or anything. It was like we would just play music. It was very bluesy. And then Owen, our drummer, was like, we could play shows. We're like, what? We could play shows? Let's play shows. We start playing shows here and there. And it was, this is over 10 years ago that we're doing this. The internet is like just kind of getting its feet with like Instagram and bands having music online that's accessible, like if you're a small band. We started to realize like you need something online. You need an album of some kind. You need to group your songs together and be able to show people. And that's honestly how that album kind of came around. We were like, all right, well, here's our songs, and we're going to like finally put them all together. And we just put it out ourselves because I have a credit card and Discogs is down the road. And so we were like, all right, well, like we'll get more shows when we have an album. And that was that. Fast forward into figuring out other people will make albums for you. That's cool. Now I can focus on all these things I want to put together, all these ideas I have, and like connecting them. And then we got definitely more conceptual as it went along. And then maybe we are, ironically, with like the Ouroboros symbology, like coming back full circle, where now we're like, all right, we've done some concept stuff. Now here's like the next group of songs that goes together, like no frills, nothing really connecting them other than they're the next batch that's ready after 10 plus years of us like really getting good at this. And they fit together that way.
Well, when it comes to concepts behind your music, have you always needed to hear the music before you came up with the lyrics, or could a lyrical idea or a concept, as you mentioned, maybe help dictate the direction of the sound?
Oh yeah, definitely have just little verbal or poetic seedlings that work themselves in. Don't always have to hear it. Sometimes just have a natural idea or just like a cadence of words that stick with me that I want to put on something. But it is like maybe seeing TV in color for the first time when you do it to the music. That's always nice. But that kind of like, I feel like then I take on a tone that's kind of established and I'm fitting in it versus just kind of coming out of nowhere and seeing what people do with what I give.
Mm-hmm. And like when it comes to that concept, are you trying to leave the album open to interpretation, or do you try to engage the listener into the story or the concept as much as the music?
I think, it's funny, like I wouldn't be able to do it if I couldn't keep myself interested. So there has to be something that engages it or something that makes it genuine and not just, singing for the sake of it. I think I kind of get into this like voyeur storytelling persona. Maybe that's my default, when I write, I think about other connections and how I could like see something or see a story, you know, and kind of tell this story with these feelings that I want to put in there. And then, you know, that'll happen. And as time goes by, I'm like, oh, I totally wrote that about myself, but kind of disguised it even to myself. So like I have to do those things to keep myself engaged and feeling authentic. So yeah, I think that probably is in there a bit.
Yeah, well, as a total concept album freak, whether it would be Mastodon's "Crack the Sky" or Nevermore's "Streaming Neon Black" or "The Black Parade" by My Chemical Romance, like it always seems like these concepts always could serve as an external metaphor for something else. Are you trying to be as direct, saying this is what the concept is, or do you think the concept could be like an external metaphor for a personal experience that you've had, or an external metaphor for a certain viewpoint, or something like that?
Hmm. I feel like in the past I have maybe created some more deliberate metaphors, and now I feel like there is just this connectedness in everything that I'm looking for, that I feel like naturally occurs whether you try to or not. Um, I think that ultimately, of course, because it's, you know, as much as you try to have different perspectives, you really only have your own. I think that it would be like impossible for it not to be this metaphor of like things in my life. Those are like the connections I'm drawing. Those are like the characters. Um, so I feel like it hasn't been intentional with me lately. I hope and I'm sure I will, because I think this is all cyclical, get re-inspired. But it has been like more of a reflective time for me. And I feel like I've put more personal nuance into my music more than ever, versus like kings and queens and kingdoms and sorcerers, which is awesome because that's more like interesting than our lives, right?
Yeah.
But human nature is totally cyclical, and there's these things that will always happen, these feelings, that the problems that we always have. um, so yeah, I feel like I am maybe doing a little personal metaphor drawing.
Well, it's funny too. Like as Henry Matisse, the painter, said, every painting is a self-portrait, and I feel like that's demonstrated on here, especially with like the with an album title like "Fear is the Cruel Master" or "Is a Cruel Master." Like, do you almost like is that meant to be like your experience with fear, or is that a message? Like, one of my favorite titles is "Fear is the Mind Killer." So like, is this maybe your personal experiences with fear, or are you portraying the essence of what fear is?
I feel like I'm looking in on all the other examples, and my own too, of how fear governs everything, you know, or like, not that it governs everything. If you let it govern you, it's a cruel master, you know, like everyone has their version of it, you know, chances they don't want to take, things they wish they did, vice versa. Um, I would say a lot of my uh, personal fears that I've reflected on and grown for are definitely in there in the songs. You know, and we wrote it in the pandemic, not that it's, you know, kind of like the quote you just said, not that it's about the pandemic, but how could it not have a bit of that in there, and kind of seeing how we were reacting to each other. And, you know, I feel like a lot of times when people lash out, people lie, they treat people how they shouldn't. Like, to me, I feel like fear is at the root of that somewhere. Like, what are you afraid of?
Yeah.
Why are you letting this
Well,
like control for the situation?
a good friend of mine once said that fear stands for false evidence appearing real, and that definitely is an aspect behind it. And people do tend to fear what they don't know all the time. And when you mentioned you were writing into the pandemic, and you are right. Like any artist who says music is a pure escapism, the world is not going to influence me. It's like that's the greatest lie an artist could ever tell you. The world is going to influence you whether you realize it or not. So, yeah.
It's very true. And I do have to say also that it is a quote that I read during the pandemic. It was in a Branch Davidian's memoir about surviving Waco.
Really?
And I was just like, holy shit. And there was more to the quote too, and they were quoting someone else and relating it to their moment. So I don't want to take like um credit for that album, but it just really resonated with me and felt like it tied everything together, because it's at the root of so much of how we treat each other
Yeah.
and how we treat ourselves.
And I mean, as somebody who reads about cults obsessively, this just added a whole new layer of questions I could ask you. But like, it was the guy
I should have given you some
well,
some bread, but next time.
yeah, definitely. But with the guy who wrote that book, I mean, I forgot his name, but was he the guy who was born in Australia and he moved to Texas? He lost his daughter in the fire.
Oh, no, it wasn't him. This guy was from like New Hampshire, Vermont. It was David Thibodeau
Okay. Yep, I've heard his
was
name.
the one that I read.
Okay. You should really look up some of the quotes from Jonestown too. If cults are a subject matter you want to like Jim
Oh
Jones.
yeah, very intrigued.
Yeah, it's beyond terrifying on just
Yeah.
everything that happened in that camp. And the final question I have about the concept, because we're about to beat this to death with the concept, but if you were to play, if you were to play live, obviously you have to put a set list together of many different songs from your catalog. So do you feel like if you opened up with a Valley of the Snakes song and then played a Planetary Space Child song and then did a couple new songs and then go back, do you feel like that adds another layer of meaning, whether it is in the placement of your set list or even just the fans' interaction with it in a live setting?
It's funny. We're like very selfish live, and we are one of those bands that like we just get so excited about new stuff, and we just play all the new shit that we want to play. It's always like new songs that we want to play because they're the ones that are like exciting us, and then we'll throw in maybe a couple that we know people want to hear, but we very rarely play very old stuff. And there's been a lot of discussion about revisiting it, because even it's just, I think as an artist too, you always look back. Like I look back on an album I wrote 10 years ago, and I'm like, wow, that sounds like an album I wrote 10 years ago, and it doesn't excite me anymore. But then you meet someone who re-engages you with the song that loves it, and then you listen to it again, and I'm like, well, if we played this again, we would play it totally differently. It would be like a new approach and kind of like a testament to how far we've come as a band together, reapproaching old stuff. So I definitely want to do that. But unfortunately, which maybe answers your question a bit, like us playing the new stuff and the things that really excite us, or a cover we wanted to figure out, throwing it in there, like that keeps us all like engaged together and
So no,
build go.
so no Ouroboros anniversary tour.
Oh my gosh, you know what? So I didn't even know it was the 10-year anniversary, which is so crazy. But that album, like people really like things on that album, and I always think about how we have to play those songs again, because we kind of just were like new, like let's keep going. But it would be nice to revisit.
Definitely. Is like there almost, and clearly since you cite literature and different mediums of art as a means of exploring lyricism, is it almost fair to say that research is like just as much part of the songwriting process as getting into a room together and laying down riffs and vocals and everything else?
Not really. Maybe I should do some research, but I feel like, I mean, if you probably can relate. If you're someone interested in cults, you're probably a well-read person, because you seem like that. If that interests you, you just go down rabbit holes, right?
Yeah.
And I was a literature major, also very into cults and psychology and criminology, and studying English, I had to also study history alongside of it. And like there's something about those two things, like what people wrote and what was going on when they wrote them, and having just a decent knowledge on world history. I feel like it is chock full of things to pull out, and I don't get specific with, let's say, things that I need to like know the right name or date, because I'm not being so specific. Like I think of those times, I try to paint a picture, and then I think about like relating to, let's say, how people felt now to like what this must have felt like, or drawing these parallels. So I feel like I am constantly doing like the emotional research in my mind because I'm just analytical. So I don't maybe like physically research, but everything is like getting noted somewhere in here.
This is
for
a good
better or
interview.
worse.
This is a great interview, and I've noticed that every great interview I've had where we have a conversation like this are all literature majors, and I just love it. I I almost wish that was a requirement in order to do if they need a literature degree to do an interview, but
It's it's true. It's like, well, do you have anything to say or no?
yeah. Well, and why do you feel like the music? Because and not to pigeonhole your band by any stretch of the means, but just for the sake out there, a lot of people have cited Ruby to be a stoner band or a doom, whatever the hell it is. I don't get the concept of stoner metal. I've gotten stoned to Emperor.
Me either.
I've gotten stoned while listening to Emperor, and I've gotten stoned while listening to Christina Aguilera. So, I think all is stoner at this point. But why do you feel that maybe this type of music that you do play best supports the lyricism that you do address?
It's a great question, and I completely agree because I'm like, what is stoner rock? Like I've replied in interviews and been like, we're not. I don't know if we're a stoner rock band. We're a stoned rock band, which I think is like what is at the root of stoner rock. So I think these like high individuals are way more likely to let their imagination go. And, maybe, you dress in all black and you got the cool band metal tee, but like, I know you like Fleetwood Mac. Like, I feel like there are those people, you know what I mean?
They're all full of shit if they say they listen to metal. I remember I hang out in the New York City hardcore scene, all right, where that's like a scene of killers right there. And I remember showing them My Chemical Romance for the first time, and they were like, "Oh, this is pretty good." Like, so.
Yeah, like I've also had like arguments where I've been like, Fleetwood Mac is metal. Listen to this Lindsey Buckingham song, and then people are like, "That's so heavy," and I'm like, "Yeah," because it's like it's the emotion. I do think people in that genre, like, I think maybe they have like a little more play between genres because I feel like it is just this kind of like dumping ground where bands get put if they don't really know where else to put them. Which I'm I'll take it, but I don't think that we're too genre specific. But I think people who listen to bands like that or doom bands, like I don't know what that is. I just think that at the time that we came out, like it was heavy riffs and melody, and it evokes a certain type of emotion that people were kind of like prescribing to that genre.
Yeah, 100%. And heaviness is such a subjective. Like, if you ask like the average person, it's like, oh, is the music you listen to heavy like Creed? They would think a band like Creed is like devil music. So like, it's like that's just totally a threshold. But could you see yourself exploring literature or all these topics with like another style of music in a way? You have a fantastic voice that I could see shine over many different sounds.
Oh, thank you. I think that you can put it into anything, and for the most part. I mean everything, man. Some of my favorite like hip hop and rap is like because of the lyrics, and like no one can like give a fucking history lesson and have it make sense and have you fucking feel stupid.
Yeah.
That better than like fucking Run the Jewels right now, in my opinion.
Just saw them.
Yeah, they're so good. And I also sing in a band that's like a 10-piece psych folk band called Cosmic Guilt, and we'll cover Graham Parsons, Neil Young. There's a lot of original, it's all originals other than that, but there's 10 of us, so we like doing covers. But I see an outlet for it anywhere. I feel like because I mess around on instruments here and there just for songwriting, but I'm a vocalist. So my in with music is using my voice, and I need to also have something to say, and that better be interesting. Otherwise, what the hell am I doing? So I call on, that knowledge, those things that I've grabbed over time that have resonated with me and have like, lasted through the ages as things that people relate to. And I feel like you can paint that picture anywhere with any sound.
Definitely.
If you're good at it.
Definitely. You have time for 2 more questions?
Yeah.
Awesome. The next question I wanted to add is actually because I've always said that art is life, and when you bring it into the world, it grows and it develops, and sometimes it could, unfortunately, die as well. But like, when you do you want every album to be just a snapshot of who you and your bandmates were at that particular time, or do you think that both the concept or even the sound of an album could also evolve over time as you evolve?
Yeah, I think it does evolve over time. It's funny, like there's this quality to it where, like I kind of said before, I interpret different meanings like later. I think some things are left open ended in this kind of interpretive way, like we were saying before. I think that, yeah, I think that they kind of change as you change and as your perspective changes on them. I'll always remember like how we were, where we were when we wrote those things. But it's funny how meanings change to you over time, that even when you are the author, you kind of unlock other places in your mind and realize that we're all just so much smarter than we give ourselves credit for. We always have like the real going back here. So I think that we write things and create things, everyone as artists, that later you're like, oh, that's what that meant.
Well, yeah, 100%. Like every artist or every listener feels differently about an album. That like sometimes if they listen to an album, it feels like a time machine. They go back in time to that. But then some people listen to an album, and they realize, wow, this I may have been listening to the song as a kid, but now that I know the lyrics, it really relates to this situation I'm experiencing now as an adult.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And the final question I wanted to ask you is the most difficult one. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
How do you know when a song is finished?
Oh, that's a really good question. It's so hard. I mean, for us, because we're a live band, and we've, like I said before, like we write all of our songs together, so it's playing it live. It's not like someone made this and brought it, and we know where it ends. For us, it's like when we get through the song, when we have put it together, we made all the parts, and we can get to the end now and remember how to get there, right? Then it's like it's done in a way, until literally we'll work on it and add things forever until it's time to record, and then it gets frozen there. And then the curse of this is that you always listen back and you're like, I should have done that, I should have done this. Now that I've been playing this song on tour for a year, but it's already recorded, I would have done that. But then that's how you have like the live versions of things and the studio versions. But for us, it's literally when we can get to the end and play it straight.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. This is kind of like a brain picking question where, like, when you're playing live, you're taking the songs that you wrote that we hear on the album and you're replicating them in a live setting. So I've always wondered, while watching live music and playing it is a great experience, is there anything remotely creative about playing live if it has such a replicant element? But if you're able to kind of change the song ups to adjust to a live setting, I think you kind of answered that.
Yeah, it's funny. We're definitely a live band, and I think like our I don't want to say struggle, but like the thing that I always keep in mind is like, how can we capture on the album exactly how we sound live, like the energy and like the quickness and the improv that sometimes happens because there's space and looseness in people's parts. That's like what we're forever striving for. So a lot of the creative part for us, like, yeah, comes from playing it live. And then when you have to record it, it's just captured in time there, you know? And then we keep playing it on tour and we're like, oh, we have this whole like 3-minute jam after. But, that's why we need to put live albums out. That's why live albums are important, even though I dislike most of them.
I've always said that live albums, and forgive the relatively vulgar analogy, but I've always said that live albums are like porn on the radio. There's no point to it. Like,
oh my gosh, it's so true. It's so true. There's a couple I like. I like BOC, On Your Feet or On Your Knees. It's so amazing. They play everything like quadruple time. Like you can hear the cocaine on the fucking record. Like it's so fast. You're like, how are they doing it? But it's awesome.
Yeah.
And Thin Lizzy, Live and Dangerous is also a sick live album.
I haven't
But
heard
like,
that one.
it's
Like
tough.
the only one I've ever loved was Metallica's S&M, because that's something that you're not going to hear on their other albums. That's like an opportunity to hear something that you aren't going to be able to hear in any other way, in any other medium. But you know, where it's just like, you know, a live album of a random show. It's like I could watch the show on YouTube now, and I just think like all it does is make me wish that I was there, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for really such an awesome conversation. I'm definitely going to hit Austin up for a part two, because I definitely think that there's a lot more we could discuss in the future.
Yeah, I would love that. This has been so nice. I really appreciate your questions because, you know, not all interview questions are created equal, and it has been really nice talking to you.
Oh, thank you so much. Is there just anything else with Ruby the Hatchet you'd like to promote? Fear is a Cruel Master. It's out. I'll just say it's out now because, again, it'll be midnight by the time this is uploaded. But is there just anything else that you would like to promote in terms of tours or anything else we could be expecting with this brand new record cycle?
Yes, we are definitely going to have an album release shortly in Philly. It's going to be on December 17th. No one knows that yet.
Oh, well, this is going to be uploaded by midnight, so...
Yeah, mark the date. We're going to have some tours next year across the US and Europe. Those are also TBD. And then I guess the last little thing, that's just a fun thing to throw in there because some people listening or watching might be Dio fans. There's a new Dio documentary that released, I think, at the end of last month. Two of the guys in this legendary Philly band, Serpent Throne, made the documentary. They also made the Pentagram documentary. And it features Owen and I, our drummer, in a reenactment scene. So any Dio fans watching the Dio doc, it is us on the screen. You are not too stoned.
That is amazing, and I'm definitely going to look for that. I have yet to see that documentary. I'm still rewatching the hell out of the Guar documentary because that's the best documentary ever, but I gotta check that out.
I've never seen that one.
If you want a good laugh, check that one out.
That seems like a good Halloween doc for me to watch.
Do check it out. I'm seeing Guar on Halloween, so...
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. Wow. Well, you enjoy that show. Yeah. And the Dio doc, it's called Dreamers Never Die. I think it's I'm sure you can Google it and find out what to watch it on. It's going to be releasing on a streaming platform also.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Ruby the Hatchet. Be sure to check out Fear is a Cruel Master. We will see you next time on Heavy New York.
Thank you.